Have you ever heard of Beringia? Have you ever heard of Atlantis? I'm sure you've heard of Atlantis, right? It's a Disney movie we watched as kids about the lost city under the sea, the myth of Plato, right? Well, it's much more real than you've been led to believe your entire life. Another thing, you've been told a story about how people got to the North American continent in science class and history class when you were growing up. You remember they talked about how the North American continent and European continents used to be covered in glaciers. And at one point in time, the sea levels were lower, and there was something called the Bering Land Bridge that connected Siberia and Alaska, and that people migrated across following the herds of migrating bison. They were hunting them, killing them off, and they ended up killing them off, roughly coinciding with the end of the last ice age. This is like the official theme song of the official authorities of science for the last 15, 20 years. It's only began to change in the last decade or two. So, recent discoveries just been made by a scientist from the University of Utah that says population of Asians arrived in what's a landmass known as Beringia, which is now sank underneath the oceans because the sea levels have risen, and something else called isostatic rebound, which I'll explain in a minute. But they got there and they camped. He says that they camped out in this region for some 10,000 years. They arrived there about 25,000 years before the present time. They stayed there for about 10,000 years, this guy's suggesting, before they moved outward and started settling the Americas. And the only reason why they even concede the 15,000 years is because of a site called Monte Verde. And Monte Verde is an archaeological site in southern Chile that has been carbon dated to 14,800 years before present. And this right here flew in the face of the old standard accepted version of how long the Americas have been populated by the Clovis first people, who have since had to, they haven't retracted their theories, because these people have based their entire careers off this. They've written their PhD theses. They've never left their office really to do any true work. They've just written a bunch of like standard narrative, regurgitated, close-minded crap that basically says if there's not hard proof, and that's something that they verify or that they found, that fits in with their preconceived biased notion of what they're looking for, then it gets thrown out. It's called alternative archaeology or crypto-archaeology. There's an entire world out there of finds that just don't go in with the narrative, and they get logged and cataloged and then shuffled and filed off into the back of the Smithsonian somewhere. You know, that scene from the Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skulls when they're in the warehouse, that's not like an exaggeration at all. And truly, it is, I believe, there is that. Maybe not like the actual warehouse, but trust me, there is a place where findings and discoveries that throughout the ages have been sequestered and hidden away, if they haven't been completely and totally destroyed. Because, well, let's just face it, that is the favorite thing to do of the powers that be. That's to destroy knowledge by burning it and eradicating all those who understand the language or the knowledge that was contained in the context of what was burned. So this site of Monte Verde, this is in southern Chile, okay, and this is supposedly the first site that was settled in the Americas. That's South America. Alaska's like way up here near the North Pole. It's like right on the Arctic Circle where Beringia is. And it's probably a good 10,000 miles or more down to the southern part of Chile, which is almost in Antarctica. So on the clear opposite side of the Pacific Ocean. Okay? So there's all that coastline up Chile, up Peru, Colombia, Ecuador, Honduras, Mexico, United States, Canada, the Alaskan coastline, all that area. We are to believe that it's basically, we haven't found any settlements, or the archaeologists won't claim any evidence for anything older than about 13,000 years here on the North American continent. And they've even had to deny the Kennewick Man. That's another thing, that this is a denial. A lot of people have claimed that there were Europeans or Aryans, basically the white people with red hair or light hair and beards, had populated the globe at one point in time. They were the race of the Atlanteans and the Lemurians. One of the races. There were actually 10 kings of Atlantis, therefore 10 races, but the sons of Atlantis, the sons of Atlas, were the actual Aryans, and they were the ruling elite family, if you will. They spread the sacred knowledge throughout the world. They peopled the world, and this is not just a mythology, it's actual oral history that was preserved and brought down through the ages, through the many thousands of years, and preserved in the writings of things like Plato in his works such as Critias, where he talks about Atlantis and he gives the history of the destruction of Atlantis. It's not at all fanciful, and if you know Plato, you would understand that he's not trying to provide any sort of a mythology. In fact, in Plato's Republic, he scoffs at Homer's presentation in the Iliad because he thinks it corrupts the minds to portray the ancients in a fanciful light, in a way that they work with the gods or something like that. So in Critias, he gives the account of Atlantis, but he gives it in a very scientific method. It's not far-fetched. You may say, oh, it says the sons of Poseidon or Zeus. Well, that's just the vernacular at the time. It says God. God is nature for them. So most people, most moderns, can't get out of their modern thought bubble to think outside the box enough to go, so this might actually be strong evidence, indication of the one world civilization, the Atlanteans, if you will, a branch of the Atlanteans. Strong evidence of it right here in Beringia. There's a national park in Alaska that you can go check out, and they've got huge mounds. These people were living there they've been living there continually for the last 25,000 years, more or less, but the actual Atlanteans, the old culture, the original culture, they were mound builders, they were pyramid builders, they were monument builders, because they were worshippers of a soul fertility cult, which, if you study your ancient religions and your cultural anthropology, you'll find that Christianity in itself is a solar fertility cult. These people were obviously very, very, very advanced. They had the naval technology to travel from the Beringia to the southern Chile to found Monte Verde, and there's not even an actual connection that they're the same race of people, because the mummies which have been found at Monte Verde have red hair, different cranial structures than the traditional. Dig a little bit deeper, one actually discovers that one of those boxes in that museum in the Smithsonian that nobody knows about, that warehouse that's housing all the discoveries that they want hushed up, well, I dug one out. It's from September 3rd, 1998, published in archive.archaeology.org, entitled Monte Verde Excavation to Resume. And it states clearly right here, so most of the area exposed in the initial excavations directed by University of Kentucky archaeologist Tom Dillahay dates to about 12,500 years, making Monte Verde the earliest known site in the Americas by some 1,300 years. The new excavations will focus on what may be a second, earlier component of the site several hundred feet to the south. A small excavation there, fully documented in the Monte Verde site report published in 1997, yielded some possible stone tools and burned wood. Radiocarbon determination suggested the material is about 33,000 years old. Between 32,840 and 33,900 years were the dates. Far older than any reliably dated site in the Americas. It says, there's no doubt about the age. It's 33,000 years old, said Mario Pino, a geologist at the Southern University of Chile in Valdivia. So there you have it. If people were supposed to have arrived, the people who populated America officially by these mainstream articles that I'm telling you about, were supposed to have split off genetically from the Asians about 25,000 years ago and then camped out in Beringia for about 10,000 years ago, and then decided to sail clear to South America to establish their first colony down near Antarctica, because that seemed like a good place to go to them at the time. Establishing a colony down there 10,000 years or so after they had decided to just be sedentary, apparently, in the one particular spot in Beringia. No. This evidence actually suggests that there was human activity on the South American continent 33,000, almost 34,000 years ago. Yeah, that's 8,000 years, conservatively 8,900 years earlier than these mainstream news articles are still, these I have no brain articles are publishing and talking about. Because they don't want to change their outlook. They don't want to actually admit the truth that there is an Atlantis and that it is a real situation. Because when people start learning about this, and that we all come from one great supra culture at one point in time in our history, that all the world's religions and everything stem from this, and that we're all one big tribe, as it says in all the good books and all the good teachings, then all this war and all the other things that keep the wheels of the war machine rotating and the profits flowing into the fat cats would go away pretty quickly. So they have to keep means to keep us divided. And they can do that by this political correct tyranny that they've created by not allowing any true investigation of the Earth's history pre-Columbian era. Basically, the Western scientists have established that before modern white men, Europeans, arrived, aka Columbus, in the Americas, there's absolutely zero possibility whatsoever that any person ever from the Africas, the Asias, or they ever sailed to America. And they stuck with that forever until finally we disproved them with Leif Erikson, and then they tried to claim, well, he made it to Greenland and then founded a colony in Newfoundland. I'm sure they made it all the way into the Americas. Kensington Runestone, the Isle Royal copper mines, Ogham writing all over the U.S., Quetzalcoatl, the serpent god, Chalam-Balam. All these people were supposed to be light, fair-skinned people who came from the east or across the sea, from Aztlan, and brought a teaching of a new religion of peace to these people. You can read these myths, and it's all plain to see. I'll leave it up to you.